I would like to work today with the quality of movement. It's something we've never done. It's something I'm going to present to the Brain Gym community as part of those workshops that I told you about. But I think with all I mean, you all know the Qigong work, you all know so much Brain Gym work. This is like doing movements like activities, exercises, whatever you want to call them, repeating them. This is like taking it to another level, right? Because we all know what the movement is. This is about how we do the movement. So it's how we use space, time, and energy, or how our movement expresses or reflects space, time, and energy.
It's interesting. Gentle for people with problems with their backs. Eh?
Yeah.
Both Patsy and I are in the same situation here.
Yes. And this is also, by the way, something I'm passionate about. So this is something I love to work with. So I'm going to, because we've all been sitting chatting, I'm going to ask us to get up as we do our brain buttons again, and either with eyes open or eyes closed, putting your feet fairly close together if you can, to challenge yourself. Now, of course, Patsy, you know, to modify anything, and if anything hurts, you don't do it, even if I tell you to. Okay. So I invite you to close your eyes if you feel stable enough to do that. And if you even just hold your hands on the fingers on those points in your navel and don't even move your eyes, just breathe. Just notice if gently through noticing your balance can come to those 3 points on each of your feet, to the middle of the tripod. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And just notice the little, what some people call the small dance of your body, centering itself, finding its balance. It's okay that it's not rock solid. That's not the idea. There'll be a little play as the body's constantly adjusting. And then switch hands. And if you feel comfortable, do the eye tracking from side to side.
Are eyes closed or open?
So with your eyes closed, see what happens when you move your eyes around with your eyes closed. Does it challenge your balance? I'm just finding that a new tool to refine my balance. And let's take the balance idea a little bit further and use our balance buttons. And as we use the balance buttons, this time with our eyes open, let's do the lazy eights with our nose. And switch hands when you're ready. And then when you're ready, we're not going to spend a lot of time with cross crawls or do different things, because we're going to do them again later with the different qualities of movement. But just for now, and keeping on with our equilibrium, we'll do our hookup standing up if you can. And if you need to sit down, Patsy, that's fine. Either of you. I do find that doing the brain buttons with my eyes closed really kind of sets me up, makes this easier. Can you hear what Bob's listening to? Do you hear a voice in the background? Oh, good. Okay. So, yes, let's start with space first. So space, time, and energy, and also flow, which is about how we control our movement, are the elements of movement that we use to help distinguish the quality of a movement, how we do a movement. So I want you to just imagine that we're in a park, okay? You're in a park, whatever the space you're in, just imagine it's a park, and you are going to meet your friend at the fountain. So just imagine someplace in the room is a fountain, and notice how you move to get to the fountain to meet your friend. That's your whole reason to go to the park, is to see your friend at the fountain. So just go ahead and just notice how you walk to meet your friend. Okay, now I want you to imagine it's a beautiful summer evening, you know, a week ago when it was maybe 25, 27 degrees, and it was just lovely, and you're going to go for a walk in the park. You're not there to meet anybody. You might see lots of people on the way. There's statues and fountains and flowers and trees, and you're just going to walk in the park. So just walk in the park, in your space, and just notice if there's a difference in the way you move in the space as you're enjoying the summer evening. So when we're talking about space here, in terms of the quality of our movement, we're talking about our attention to space, how we attend to space. So what was different about the way you moved in space when you went to the fountain and when you were just enjoying the park?
I had focus and I only saw what my friend.
Right.
And all of the trees and everything were there, and I was looking everywhere.
So you had focus when you went to see your friend at the fountain? Is that what you're saying? And when you were looking at the trees, you had a different kind of focus?
I could see more. I saw everything around. With a friend, it was very, very focused.
Yep. And you're agreeing, Patsy?
Yes.
Okay. And that is exactly a perfect definition of the way we look at these two different kinds of attention to space. One is we call single focus, and the other is multifocus. Okay, so awareness of space can be very singly focused, one point, multifocus. And Patricia, you can relate that to brain gym, right? To the focus dimension. I mean, you can too, Patsy, but Patricia is in the more advanced work. We deal very much with the focus dimension being the balance between being able to focus on details and being able to keep things in a big perspective. Okay, so in terms of actually the shape of our movement in space, if I can call it that, can you describe the way you moved in space? That single focus led to a certain kind of movement in your body that was different. I saw it was different from when you had the multifocus. Can you describe what maybe the path of your movement, how it changed?
I think when I was watching for my friend, I was just watching for my friend, and I was walking quite purposefully looking for her. But when I was just meandering and enjoying the outside, I was quite a bit more relaxed.
Okay, so that's the emotional element of those two things. And you also use the word meandering. And so we can talk about a meandering path in space or meandering movement. Can you meander with your arms even in space as you move? Okay. And what would be the other kind of movement that you did when you had a single focus? When you walked, and I saw Patricia, yes, when you walked to the fountain, your movement pathway was very, how would you say it, Patsy? Straight. Or I thought you said, and we use the word direct.
Correct. Yes.
And just not that you need to know this terminology, but the terminology we use in movement analysis is direct, and then the other pole of that axis is flexible. Okay, so indirect movement is flexible, which is another way of saying meandering, right? It's a similar idea. So let's just take that in terms of a brain gym movement. When we do the calf pump, no, let me do the grounder. Let's take the grounder. When we do the grounder, we did it this way. That movement is, would you say, more direct or more flexible?
I think it's direct.
Yes, absolutely. Now let's do like our lazy eights for any kind of lazy eights for our eyes. So what would you call this?
Well, it has to be meandering. It has to be indirect, flexible.
Exactly. Exactly. So can you see how even with our simple brain gym activities that we've been doing, and we can experience the same thing with our Qigong. And there may be a Qigong movement, just like a brain gym movement, that has a flexible aspect to it and a direct aspect to it. Does that make sense? The opening movement of Qigong is pretty direct, right? And then think of this one. This one is pretty flexible. And look at the difference in my focus. If we use that word attention or focus again, when I do this, my eyes are really moving. Yes, my whole body has that multi-focus attitude to it. Whereas this one is very just one-dimensional, single focus. Okay, does that all make sense? Okay, so the next aspect we're going to look at is time. So I want you to imagine that we are in a desert with very hot sand. I mean, really, really hot. Okay, so this is, you know, this summer, you know, where was it? It was 50 degrees somewhere. So you're walking on that hot sand. So I want you to notice, what is it like when you're walking on that hot sand? Okay, great. Yeah, okay. Now we're by a nice cool stream in the mountains here, right? Well, but I'm thinking of a mossy bank. Actually, we have the forest over here. There's, you know, moss that's an old growth forest. Moss that's been there for ages, and it's so springy. I love walking on it. It's so squishy and soft, right? So imagine you're walking on the moss, a mossy bank by a stream. It's all squishy. It feels lovely. Okay, so that movement was very different, right? In terms of the time. It might be very direct in both cases, or it might not. But the time is definitely different. So how would you describe the time of the movement when you were walking on the hot sand?
Well, I was getting off it as fast as I could.
Right, okay. Quick, exactly. And that's the word we might use, quick or sudden. Sudden is usually the word that's used, or quick. It's definitely that way. Now, what about when you are walking on the mossy bank? What's your attitude toward time there? How is that different?
Relaxed about it.
Relaxed? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of another word?
Going.
Pardon?
Easy going.
Easygoing. Okay.
Quite calm, I think.
Okay. And in terms of time, what kind of time? And this is not an easy one to come up with, but
Oh.
slow. Okay. Okay.
He doesn't like any of our words. What is it?
So the difference, our attitude towards time, your attitude towards time in the desert, the movement was very quick, and the sense was one of, we would say, urgency, maybe. Okay, because of that heat. So to go at it from the sense of the attitude, the opposite of a sense of urgency could maybe be said to be a sense of indulgence. Not as a negative thing, but just indulging in time, enjoying time. Patricia was getting close to that. The enjoyment of time, or, you know, easy, whatever. Yes. So when we're enjoying time, we say the time is sustained. Okay, because the movement, the speed of the movement doesn't necessarily have to be slow, because we can have sustained movement, but it's the idea of continuous movement. The individual movements were not continuous walking on the hot sand, right? It was, they were very quick and sudden. Okay, and yes, there were, you could say you sustained a lot of quick sudden movements, but each movement itself was not sustained. It finished very quickly, whereas the other one, the movement could be sustained. So for instance, in Qigong, what kind of time do we use?
Some are, well, most of them I think are relaxed. Like we don't hurry through anything.
No. So Qigong as a whole is a practice of sustained time. Our attitude towards time in all the Qigong exercises is very sustained. So in terms of dance, one of course uses very different, there are lots of quick movements, and yeah, it depends on what style of dance you want to do. A waltz might be very sustained, but a cha-cha-cha would have very quick movements. Okay, so that's about our, so the time is about our attitude towards time, whether we're going to indulge in time or whether it's going to be very sudden and quick. So when there's a noise, you know, and you turn your head, it's obviously very sudden movement. If you're enjoying a hug with your best pal, it might be very sustained movement. And you probably wouldn't grab them, right? You would have a sustained movement to embrace them. Okay? But if somebody says, Patricia, your reaction would be very different than when somebody says, Patricia. I mean, because it can be, I mean, Bob uses this in acting too, you know, we use it with our voices as well. Okay, so the third aspect is energy. So let's everybody stand up again. I want to get you moving, you know, if you can. So imagine we're going to experience cleaning our house and the energy we use to clean our house. Okay, so you've got a feather duster, and you are going to dust things around the house. So let's just notice dusting, and notice your energy. What kind of energy are you using? What kind of force are you using as you use your feather duster? Okay, now let's say you've got a stain in the sink. You've got an old ceramic sink with stain on it, or maybe the stove has got some encrusted stuff that spilled and got burned and you didn't have time to clean it up. Okay, so now find out what kind of movement you're going to do. What kind of energy, what kind of force are you using? Okay, and notice you might be going, no, I can't do that there. You know, you might be, depending on what kind of stain it is, it could be direct, right? Or it could be flexible, right? You might use either one, just depending on the stain. You know, like washing windows, I tend to use flexible movement, right? But when I'm trying to get the stuff off the stove, I tend to use very direct movement, right? But the energy, the use of force can change. So what kind of use of force did you use to get off that stain? How would you describe the kind of energy?
Intense,
What?
intense,
Intense? Right, okay.
focused,
Yes. So when a movement has intense focused force, we might say that movement is
Specific?
when somebody has the ability to use intense focused force, we'd say their energy is what?
Direct?
No, that's space. This is something different now.
high,
Yes, high energy.
high,
We might say they have a lot of
Force?
force, and a lot of force, the quality of a lot of force could be said they are really
Well, if I'm scraping something off of my stove, I'm darn mad.
they're very focused.
Okay, so could you say that the energy is strong or powerful?
Yes, yes.
Okay. With kids, I often use the two examples I use will be lifting a feather and lifting a big rock. So they get it easily that way. But we're talking about movement. We're not talking necessarily just about moving objects. We're talking about moving our body around. So, okay. And so what kind of energy did you use to use the feather duster?
Gentle,
What?
flowing,
Flowing. Yes, that's a whole nother quality too, flowing. But how much force did you use to do that?
very gentle.
Very gentle, and that's the word we use. So I know next time I'm going to start with asking people about the feather duster and not about the scrubbing, because you got the gentle right away. Okay, so does that make sense? That it's easier to find the gentle, and then maybe you would have found the strong. I'm asking you for help here. Okay, but yeah. Okay, so do you see the difference? Sometimes we can have very gentle movements. Sometimes we need to have strong movement. So even thinking about Qigong, can you think of different movements that are more gentle and movements that are show more strength? Okay, so the pushing waves and have a real gentle kind of movement.
Oh, the punching one is powerful.
Punching one is powerful. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So when we combine these together, all three things, space, time, and energy, we come up with a complete kind of movement quality. And Laban, who developed this, defined these as there are 8 possible combinations. So let's stand up. You can to do this. You could do it sitting down, but I'm always good about full body movement. So let's start with a movement that is direct, strong, and quick. So in the order we did them: direct, quick, and strong. There you go. That's direct, quick, and strong, right? So what do you suppose we call that quality of movement? You said it. Somebody said it earlier. Patsy, you said it when I asked for a strong movement in Qigong.
I don't know now.
What do you call this kind of a movement? What am I doing? Punch.
Punch. Punch.
See what I said? Because you just said it a minute. When we do the punching, it's strong, okay? But you can do a punching movement, you know, you can do a punching movement with any part of your body. Possibly.
Looking for something more technical.
Lavan kept these names, and so this is not like okay. So the names are like, let's just say nicknames, right? Because what we're talking here is about that combination of direct, strong, quick movement, which you can do with any part of your body. You can even punch words, right? If you were angry at somebody, you might say, "Stop that now." And my voice is very, I mean, the quality of even the words, the way I'm saying them is very quick. It's direct and it has a lot of force. Okay, so let's imagine the opposite of that. So instead of being direct, the movement would be flexible, meandering, yes? Instead of being quick, it would be sustained. And instead of being strong, it would be gentle. So that's the opposite of a punch. So what does that movement feel like as you do it?
Soothing, gentle.
Soothing, gentle. Moving like it's gentle or light. You could call it, it's flexible, meandering,
Flowing.
flowing. Flowing sounds like flowing. Also like cloud-like. We call it floating, float. So the opposite of punch, watch me, Patsy. So the opposite of punch is float. Can you feel the difference in the dynamics of that? Okay, so they are opposite poles. They're all opposites. However, what happened if we did, instead of the punch, if we kept the strong direct movement, but made it sustained? It still has lots of energy, but it's sustained. And what would we call that? Might we call it? I'm sorry, people don't normally. Hello? Hello? Oh. I don't know how, I don't give my cell phone number away, and I don't know how they can call me to tell me that, you know, that Revenue Canada is going to investigate me or something. Okay, sorry. We call this press. Press. And notice I can press with my voice. but we can press a movement. So can you think of a brain gym activity that has the quality of press to it? Direct, slow, direct, sustained, powerful. Can you think of a brain gym movement, Patricia, that has that quality?
Well, I was playing with them in parts of the movements, like, the crop.
Yes, okay, there's an interesting thing. We could do cross crawls with a pressing feeling, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's do cross crawls with a pressing feeling. Now let's do cross crawls with a floating feeling. So you can see how it really changes, even though we're doing the same movement in a way, it's really different. So the one I was thinking of for press would be either the calf pump or the grounder. But especially, I think, if you think of doing you've done the calf pump many, many times in class, right? So do it now and think of the quality of press as you press your heel to the ground. Press. And does being very aware of doing that very direct, sustained, strong movement, does that change the way the calf pump feels in your body?
Focusing on different areas of my body.
Okay, good. So let's make that strong, direct, sustained movement. Let's make it, instead of being strong, let's make it gentle, sustained, and direct. And how does that change doing the calf pump? And we call this movement glide. So maybe even a better idea for glide would be to do the grounder. Yes, thinking of calf pump, I really like the idea of the press, but with the grounder, thinking of just gliding over to one side and back. So it's still very direct. And it's very sustained. But we could think of a light quality in the body, a light or gentle quality in the body. Okay, now if we take that light, gentle, sustained movement and we make it quick, it's still direct, it's still gentle, but it's quick, 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 quick. What is that like? Okay, so we call that dab, dab, dab. So, you know, if we were doing tapping, like we do the tapping around our eyes, got my glasses on, so it's hard to do that. You know, that would be dabbing. We wouldn't want to use strong force to do tapping on our face, right? dab. It's similar to tap. I mean, you know, they use the word dab. Right? But it's very direct. The movement is direct. It's single focused. Each dab, each tapping movement that has the quality of dabbing is very single focused. It's gentle and it's quick.
You don't relate to that word much at all.
You don't relate to the word dab?
No, I dab into something. To do this, call it dab.
Okay, but the idea is that the word dab is for the quality of the space, time, and energy, not a description of the movement itself. So could you call this tapping?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so the movement is tapping, but the quality has a nickname. But you can just say this is tapping with light, direct, quick energy. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
And think of the difference. Think of if somebody did that with, okay, so no, my idea didn't work. Okay, so what if instead of being direct, what if it was flexible, meandering? So how would that change the movement? If it's still quick and gentle, but it's flexible, meandering, what's that like if you were doing it, you know? So we call that flicking. Flick. You see the difference between dabbing and flicking? Because that flexible nature of the space, that multi-focus nature of the space. So we might flick, you know, a lint off because it's multi-focus, right? We don't want it. We don't want to dab it into where it is, into one point. We're trying to flick it off somewhere. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if we were to do that with, you know, powerful force, with strong force, what happens? So we call that slash. Think of somebody, you know, swordmanship. You know, you need, if you can slice somebody's head off, you need to, yeah, I know. But can you think of it? In martial arts, there's a lot of circular movement. There's punching that's very direct, but there's also slashing movements. I studied swordmanship, so I know that. And then I stopped when I realized what it was all about. Okay. So we've covered everything except what happens if the movement is still flexible and it's still flexible and strong, but it's sustained. So if you take that flexible movement, but it's sustained, we call that movement ringing. Ringing. Because think of it, if you were to wring out a towel, right, you have to use sustained force. You can't do it with quick energy. It's sustained, it's powerful, and it's also flexible because there's rotation involved. Does that make sense? So those are all the qualities, the 8 classical qualities of movement. So in the time that's left, if you all have an extra 5 minutes, we can go through the Qigong and just play with the qualities of the movement you're doing. So it's just open, and you can experiment trying it with different, you know, I have a certain quality that I do everything with, that I'm teaching you, but just as using it just as movement to play with the different qualities as you do it, or notice what qualities you're using. You don't have to change them if you don't want to, but just notice your attitude towards time, your attention to the space, and your use of energy or force. Okay? Here we go. Just as an example, you could decide to make this a powerful movement. Feeling lots of energy, or you could decide to make it a very gentle movement. It's the same movement, but I'm using much less energy now to do it. Okay? And continuing. And this is the kind of thing, every time you do these kinds of movements, you can focus also, Patsy, on your spine, on the lengthening, feeling that plumb line, and okay, and changing to the next one. And changing, stepping out. Coming back together with the feet. And changing again. Changing. changing. Changing, stepping out to look at the moon. So notice in this movement, the end of the movement, we're reaching up. That's very direct, single focus. Our whole body is focused up looking at the moon. But how we get there has a certain feeling of flexibility. Does that make sense? And changing. And I'm very aware of in all this movement of the sustained quality of it. I think you could do this movement with more or less force, but without the sustained quality, it would just be a very different experience. And changing. And stepping out. And changing. So when I do this movement, I feel a difference. The lower part of my body, I really sense that press. I mean, we talked about that, yield to push in the feet, and the legs are doing that very, really direct, strong, sustained movement. But the top of my body has more gentleness or lightness to it and is more multi-focused. It's indulging more in the space. And changing. Again, I feel that gentleness that Patsy was talking about for this movement more in my upper body and arms. And I feel more of the power in my legs. But you could feel the movement of the hands being, you could really feel it as a stronger press if you wanted to, or you could feel it more as a gentle glide in changing legs. And if I were Patsy right now, I would probably experience a lot of these movements simply as a lengthening of my spine as the limbs are moving freely. But I'd focus my energy on really the lengthening of my spine, my tail gently falling downwards between my legs, and the gentle suspension of from the top of my head and changing. Sometimes injuries allow us to be more aware of different parts of our bodies than we normally would be. And then we focus also experiencing how other parts of our body can support us so that the injured part can heal. And change legs. Another thing is that sense of creating space. Did we talk about the kinesphere last week? Can somebody just say yes if we did? The kinesphere, the sphere around the body? No, that was my other class. Okay. Okay, everybody coming in here. This is important because you knew this. So here's another idea, and I'm thinking particularly about Patsy because of her spine, but Patricia, this is, I think, good for you. And I've seen you be more over the last month or so. I've seen your kinesphere become larger. So our kinesphere, kina means movement, and sphere, you know what a sphere is. Okay, so the kinesphere is the movement sphere that is the extension of our body in space, but not moving through space. But it's the kinesphere we extend with us everywhere we are. Yes? So another idea here in all this Qigong is how big is my kinesphere, right? How far do I reach out with my body in space? So we can do that in all these movements. And I'm thinking, again, that's another thing in terms of healing, Patsy, is we tend, when we feel pain, or feel injured, there's a tendency to pull into ourselves. You know what I mean? We draw into ourselves. So it's a matter of like the inhalation of bringing us our back, allowing bringing back the sense of our own kinesphere and filling our own kinesphere, and the space, giving our body space for that healing. Okay, there's the end of my little lecture. So going on. Okay, and then okay, coming up, and we'll just do 4 to each side. End of the way. Change. Whoops, same leg first. So you could do this more quickly, like more of a flick, or you could do it more floaty and change to cross lateral. Could have a real flick to it. Okay. And then we have our rises. Where really for this, rising with a balance and doing it in a sustained direct way is really important. Okay, well, I know we really ran over today, but it was a new exploration. Yes.
Very good. It's
There
a
was
great
no
class
rush.
once again, Dana. So thanks very much. I'm.
You're
so-
welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.